Hey guys, so today you and I are going to talk about managers in tech companies, so let's get into it. So the question in question was, hi Frederick, would you say that the best managers in companies often are also great individual contributors as explained by Steve Jobs? Not necessarily. Uh, I would say that the best managers in IT are the managers who understand the work that is being done and understand the way to help teams produce results. These sorts of it's the sort of individual who can do the job but understands that it's not about them. It is about figuring out a sustainable way of doing work that feels comfortable and good for all the people involved. Because I've worked with people who, like the norm guys, is that you have a manager, like a tech manager, who is one or the other. It is extraordinarily rare that I find that you have someone who can do both. I've only ever met one or two people usually who has that ability, and you either are stuck with, which is the most common one, the social manager, like the person who they can only talk. They can't actually do anything. They can't make anything happen. That is not a meeting. All they really do at the end of the day, guys, is to sit in meetings and talk to people and request things and ask for like people from different departments or so forth and so forth to do things. Their focus isn't to contribute, if that makes sense, to the actual process of delivery. Their focus is to manage people, at least in my part of the world. And then you have the other type, who are the people who can't really structure anything. They can't, like they are just software. They're basically people who they're very good technically with the technology, perhaps, but they can't lead. They can't organize anything. They're like, I've actually worked with a guy a while back. He was so incompetent that like he was one of the best software developers. He's community wide regarded in one of the, so I think top 6-ish, something like that, in Scala development or something like that. And I mean, there was no question that he was a very, very talented engineer, but he was completely useless as a leader. He couldn't. I think. I mean, the company basically had to hire people to help him manage the company, and people like I don't know how many people they went through. Just to find someone who can sort of pick up the slack there, because the reality was that his engineering skills and his way of thinking was extremely difficult for anybody to align with, or it was difficult to please him. It was difficult for people to for him to actually provide some type of vision to the engineers within the company. And so that is the other problem. Whereas he can sit down, he was so good that he could sit down and write a solution to most things, which of course he did, but he never led. Like if he had a problem, he didn't lead, he did it himself, and then that was it, right? And that sort of, as I said, like the other extreme. And Steve Jobs, I'm not saying that he meant that this was something, that this was the sort of person that you were looking for. I believe that the people who are great individual contributors are, as I said, these are the people who understand how to achieve results. And as I said before, guys, these people are a minority. They really are a minority. The 80-20 rule, I would say, is very applicable here, because the reality is that the meaningful progress that is being done in the more complicated areas of human society is being done by the 20%. Now, the thing that I argue is not that it's 20% doing all the work and then it's 80% of all, people who just fuck around. What I'm saying is that unless you have a cookie cutter problem that perfectly fits into what a certain what is mass consumable, what is easy to deal with, if that makes sense. And it of course varies depending on the humans that you're talking about. But if for example, if you're going to find programmers, finding programmers are difficult, but if you get programmers and you create like this sort of cookie cutter product company set up with the teams doing their work in their individual groups, etc., etc., that is not a complicated problem per se, because it is a very well established it's a well-established pattern to follow. It is very easy to just set all that up, because it's we have gone through so much work to get to a point where the entire industry sort of knows how to do that. But the real problems, the things that are actually not working with that structure, no one has a solution for that, because it is beyond 80% of us to figure out, for example, how to deal with having too many meetings, or how to deal with bad interviewing processes, or incompatibilities in teams, or how to deal with the scheduling of work between teams, etc., etc., or how to deal with very technical solutions where you might have very complicated software that needs to be written. All of these sorts of more non-standard problems, or well, they are standard, but they haven't been figured out by someone who has to basically be a genius, and provided in a format that can be mass consumable. It's almost impossible to find someone who can do that, and that's the sort of person that you need. I believe when it comes to what Steve Jobs was saying, there was no one would have made Apple into what it was today if it wasn't for Steve Jobs and these sorts of 20%ers, the people who truly are gifted at solving problems, for real problems, and that is just not the average manager. So what I want you to take away from this is that no, I don't really believe that just because you can as it depends on what you mean, I am not 100% sure what this means to be a great individual contributor, but if my interpretation is correct, then no, I don't believe that just because you are... I mean, I agree with what I think Elon Musk has said, something similar, and I 100% agree that if you're going to lead in IT or be a good manager, you have to know what you're doing. You have to be a software developer. You're going to be shit at the job otherwise, or rather you're going to be average, which is shit. To be completely frank with you guys, the average software IT leadership is absolute shit. Most of them have no idea how to write software, how to structure work process, and so forth. All they really do is regurgitate the things that they pick up from like the internet or so forth and so forth. They can't actually do anything themselves. And sometimes that's fine, because maybe their responsibility is to just hire people, which is that's if you call that fine. But then you have an engineering manager who doesn't really know how to do software development, who is hiring other software developers, and also said that that's never worked. Any working IT company that I have been part of where they've really nailed down both the hiring and the work process has come down to the same thing. They have senior level software developers, like real professionals in the company, who basically do all the work of doing that. The engineering manager, he's literally only directing these people to do the job for him or her. Well, that's basically what it comes down to, because this individual cannot fix these problems. And that's the 80-20 rule, I say. As I said, these people are often very software gifted and can deal with these sorts of issues, but the people who, on the other hand, if you have a person who only knows the coding and doesn't know how to solve problems, because these sorts of problems these are soft problems, if that makes sense, soft skills problems. I've worked with people like that as well. And they completely ran the company in the ground because there was no leadership, and everything became a misalignment and a hodgepodge of people doing whatever they were doing, like there was no collaboration between the teams, etc., etc., because there was like a void of leadership, because this dude was spending more time sitting and quote unquote planning what the next tech stuff was going to be about, and then he still didn't chip in, provide much in terms of value to the teams, because everybody was sort of allowed to do whatever they what made sense for them, which is also not leadership. And that is the thing that makes the difference. You have to be the sort of, as a good analogy that I like to use is, you have to be a general who started out as a private and went to war and earned your stars through combat. That is the ideal individual to lead in any situation, because it's the individual who can lead and understand what it means to be part of an army, or like how to win in combat or whatever. It doesn't have to be the war, of course. And it's the sort of individual who, if the shit hits, can pick up the gun and start fighting as well. But he or she understands that the most important thing is that they use all the experience that they have gathered over the years to lead the people who are going to do the fighting, not stop being this critical part of the system, because there are other people doing the fighting, and your place should be supporting them in the best way possible, until such a time where there's nobody left and you have to pick up the man, or until such a time where it is most appropriate that you also join the fighting. That is the ideal individual. Have a great day.